There's something strange that happens every time the World Cup arrives. Billions of people get excited. Friends become analysts. Families gather around televisions. Entire countries seem to stop what they're doing. And yet, some people have the exact opposite reaction. Not indifference, not boredom, hatred. And here's the uncomfortable part. Maybe that person is you. Not because you dislike football, but because the bigger the event, the worse you feel. And psychology suggests the reason might have very little to do with football at all. Maybe people don't hate the World Cup. Maybe they hate what it reveals. Let's start with the explanation nobody talks about: loneliness. Imagine walking into a room where everyone is laughing at a joke you didn't hear. Nobody is excluding you. Nobody is doing anything wrong. But something shifts. Everyone else is connected to a shared experience you're not part of. Social psychologists call this perceived outsider status, the feeling that the entire world is participating in something meaningful while you're standing just slightly outside it. The World Cup is one of the largest shared experiences on Earth. For billions of people, that's exactly what makes it exciting. But for others, that's precisely what makes it painful. Because watching everyone come together doesn't create belonging, it creates distance. It reminds you that everyone else seems to be sharing something you don't share. And sometimes what looks like irritation at a football tournament is actually something much quieter. A loneliness that was already there. The World Cup didn't create it, it exposed it. But there's a second explanation, and this one is stranger. Psychologist Brehm spent years studying what happens when people feel pressured toward a behavior. His finding was counterintuitive. The more unavoidable the expectation, the stronger the resistance. He called it psychological reactance, and few events in the world trigger it more reliably than the World Cup. Think about someone who casually enjoys football. Then the tournament arrives. Every conversation becomes football. Every advertisement becomes football. Every social media feed becomes football. And something unexpected happens. The more the excitement is pushed toward them, the less interested they become. Not because their opinion changed, because their freedom feels threatened. The irritation isn't directed at the sport. It's directed at the unspoken expectation that they should care. Here's what makes this finding genuinely disturbing. Some of the loudest World Cup critics might actually enjoy football. What they can't stand is being told what to feel about it. And the harder the world pushes, the harder they push back. The third explanation goes even deeper. It has to do with identity. Think about the person who always rolls their eyes when something becomes massively popular. The same film everyone loves, the same musician everyone's talking about, the same event everyone's celebrating. Most people assume they're simply being difficult, but researchers studying identity found something more precise. People don't just define themselves by what they like, they define themselves by what they reject. For someone who has spent years building an identity around independent thinking, around standing slightly apart from the crowd, the World Cup poses a quiet threat. Because suddenly, everyone is moving in the same direction, talking about the same thing, feeling the same thing. And if your identity is built on being different, following the crowd feels strangely dangerous, even when the crowd is just watching football. So the rejection isn't really about the tournament. It's self-protection, a story they've been telling themselves for years. I think for myself. I don't follow trends. I'm not like everyone else. The World Cup doesn't threaten that story. It tests it. So here's where all three of those explanations converge into something uncomfortable: loneliness, reactance, identity. They look completely different on the surface, but underneath they share the same structure. The World Cup arrives, and something that was already there, some quiet tension, some unresolved story, some unexpressed need, suddenly has nowhere to hide. Two people watch the exact same event. One feels belonging, one feels distance, one feels joy, one feels irritation. Neither reaction is automatically right.
neither is automatically wrong, because we're never reacting only to what's in front of us. We're reacting to what it means. And sometimes the strongest reaction to a global event tells you less about the event itself and more about the story you've been carrying for years. The World Cup doesn't create those feelings. It just makes them impossible to ignore.